Hello friends and welcome back to Build Odd Acres. In today's video we're going to talk about one of the most animalistic tractor brands you might have never heard of, the Sato line of tractors.
Ow! So Sato Agricultural Machinery was a Japanese tractor manufacturer. They actually were founded way back in 1914, and they started making tractors around the early 1970s until
In 1980 they were bought up by Mitsubishi Manufacturing and became the Mitsubishi Agricultural Machine Company, but the Sato name was kept on the machines until 1984 when it was dropped. So in other videos we've talked about the Asian invasion and a little bit about gray market machines. And a gray market machine is an item that was made or produced for one specific market, but it's then been brought over and been sold in another market. A great example of this was in the 1970s and the early 1980s. You had a lot of cars coming into the United States from other markets that weren't ever meant to be sold in the US, and they just were because it was cheaper to import one than buy the same car here. And so this is what happened with the Sato machines.
Sato and Mitsubishi have to be two of the most common, well-known gray market machines. And those gray market machines offered a lot of things. They offered diesel engines, four-wheel drive. They were built right. And they were really one of the biggest reasons the American garden tractor market got killed off in the 1970s and the 1980s. And we talk about that at length in this video. If you want to see it, please click after watching this video. So, like we said, they had a lot of features that the American garden tractors at the time didn't have. They were similar size to those tractors. They had all these extra features and the prices were pretty low. So they were really attractive to a lot of property owners here in the US. And you started seeing more and more of them come over into the US, I would say really from the mid-70s. And they got more and more popular all the way going through the 1980s.
And for everyone out there who's like, oh no, I'd still rather support American business, let me frame it to you like this. Would you rather have a brand new, any brand garden tractor, or would you rather have a brand new Kubota BX for the exact same price? That is essentially what the American market was faced with.
I will say this, I've never owned a gray market tractor, but I do know a lot of people that have, and I've seen a lot of them in person. But I have owned a lot of Japanese tools, and Japanese built stuff is built to last, and there's nothing, really a negative that I can say about any of the Japanese made stuff that I've owned. I would say German made and Japanese made are probably two of the best made globally, countries that I can think of. What do you think?
I think I'd have to agree is that if you want something that'll last you forever, you're gonna buy Japanese or German. That is how it is for a lot of people.
I think German, you could argue a lot of times, is over-engineered, whereas I don't think that's usually the case with Japanese. Japanese stuff is usually built to last a long time, even considering that the owners may not do proper maintenance over that time. So Sato tractors are actually distributed in the United States by Nita, which is the Northeast Equipment Dealers Association. And here in the East Coast, they would have been required by Nita to be painted brown and white because they were distributed by David Brown dealers, and they wanted them to match the David Brown tractors. Actually worked out well because they fit in some of the holes in the David Brown line. They might have had customers wanting certain size models that David Brown didn't have, but they may have had from Sato. So they sold well. And what they do on the West Coast?
On the West Coast, they had painted blue and white to match with Ford dealers because on the West Coast, they were sold by Ford.
And the Mitsubishi line of Sato tractors, you could tell the difference because the Satos are going to have S and then the model number, whereas Mitsubishi are going to have MT and then the model number, but they're basically the same tractor. So ever since I was a young boy, I've always been fascinated by these Sato tractors. I think it was because of the animal names, really made them stand out to me. I thought they were cool. And like I said, I saw a lot of them in person even since I was a kid, and they always seemed like cool little tractors to me. So let's discuss some of the different models. Starting off with the smallest Sato tractor, and that's going to be the Beaver, which came in 3 different variants: the Beaver 1, the Beaver 2, and the Beaver 3. So the smallest Sato would have been the Beaver, which was the S370, S372 and S373. So the Beavers were made from 1977 until 1984. So the Beaver 1 and the 2 both had a 15 horsepower KE70 Mitsubishi 2-cylinder diesel engine, whereas
the Beaver 3 had a K3A 16 horsepower 3-cylinder Mitsubishi diesel engine.
So these Beaver models would have weighed between 1,035 and 1,235 pounds. They had gear transmissions and they had a 2-range gearbox.
And they were all available in either 2 or 4-wheel drive, depending on how you ordered them.
They had 8x16 rear tires. They had about a 48 to 49 inch wheelbase, depending on the model. And the rear category 0 3-point hitch had about a 1,247 pound lift capacity.
However, on the Beaver 3, it was actually a category 1 3-point hitch.
And it had a bigger lift capacity of over 1,400 pounds. What would the next model have been, Brett?
The S470 Buck. And so this one would have featured a K3B Mitsubishi diesel, still a 3-cylinder, and it had 18.5 horsepower. And this one was made from 1979, again up until 1984.
So it weighed between about 1,157 and 1,268 pounds, and it had 9.5-16 rear tires and a category 1 3-point hitch. So next up, we're moving up the animal chain, would have been
the Elk, the S550 Elk to be exact.
And you can probably guess that the G stands for gas because the Elk was only offered in a gas model. That would have been the PB100 Mazda 4-cylinder gasoline engine. And what else was unique about the Elk?
Well, not so much unique as disappointing as that it was only offered in 2-wheel drive, which I think would have really hindered sales because I don't think that many people would have went out buying a tractor.
But I have to wonder, how well did the Elk sell versus other Sato models? And because it was gas and 2-wheel drive, was it considerably cheaper at the time, which may have made it more attractive to certain buyers?
This is very true.
Let us know if you're from that era, if you have an old Sato, and what you think of the Elk versus some of the other models. So the Elk was made from 1972 until 1983, had about a 58-inch wheelbase, 8.3-24 rear tires, and it weighed just over 1,400 pounds shipping weight.
So the next tractor we have to talk about is going to be the S630 Bull, which is where Sato really started showing off their size and their strength.
This would have featured a massive 25 horsepower 2-cylinder KE130 Mitsubishi diesel engine. It had 3 ranges now instead of 2, so more gear options for different jobs. The Bull was offered with either 13.6-16 turf or 11.2-24 ag tires. It really gave it a stout stance.
And so this tractor would have been available in both 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive, and would have weighed somewhere between 2,006 and 2,138 pounds, which I assume the difference would be 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive.
And the category 1 3-point hitch was rated for over 1,400 pound lift capacity at the pins.
And so if you really compare this to my father's Ford 1700, they would be pretty comparable machines.
Pretty similar for sure. Let's move on to the big Bison. So there was 2 models of the Bison. There was the S650 and the S670. The main differences being the engines offered. The S650 offered the same PB100 Mazda 4-cylinder gasoline engine that produced 25 horsepower.
And then the other one, the S670, would have been available with the K4D Mitsubishi 3-cylinder diesel.
So the S650 Bison was made for about 10 years, from 1973 until 1983, and it featured a 6-speed 2-range gear transmission. Had 11.2-24 rear tires and about a 60-inch wheelbase.
So the other interesting thing to note about the S650 Bison is this one was only available with Mazda's 4-cylinder PB100 gas engine, and only available in 2-wheel drive like the S550 Elk.
So what can you tell us about the S670 Bison, Brett?
So the S670 Bison would have been made from 1980 to 1984 and featured Mitsubishi's 4-cylinder K4D diesel engine and had been available in both 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive.
And it had a massive 30 horsepower power plant. So this big Bison weighed about 2,300 to 2,650 pounds, give or take, depending on which model you got. And the rear lift capacity in that Category 1 3-point hitch was over 2,000 pounds.
That's a lot of pounds.
So these tractors, as you can see, are getting bigger, bigger, bigger. The bigger the animal, the bigger the tractor. So the last animal tractor model of the Satoh line, which was the biggest tractor, would have been the Stallion. And I was a little confused because it seems like all the previous models have been wild animals that you would find out in the woods in the wild, whereas a Stallion is usually a kept animal in a barn. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't go something like the grizzly bear or
even the
Mustang. The moose would have been a cool name.
The moose would have been a really cool name.
But they picked the Stallion, and that's what we're going to talk about.
So the S750 Stallion was made from 1977 to 1984, and it had one very unique thing about it, and that's that all the tractors we mentioned so far have either had Mazda gas engines or Mitsubishi diesel engines, but the Stallion didn't. The Stallion had an Isuzu 3AB1-1 3-cylinder diesel.
It produced 38 horsepower.
Which is an impressive number, you gotta admit. And was available in both 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive and driven through a 9-speed transmission.
So these Stallions would have had about a 72-inch wheelbase or 6 feet, and they weighed between about 3,100 and 3,400 pounds. They had 13.8-28 rear tires and a thirsty 12-gallon fuel tank, which rounded out the Stallion's features.
So there's one more thing I feel like we should really know about these Mitsubishi and Sato tractors, and that's that they were very no-frills, cost-effective, dependable machines. Can you agree?
I would agree. They were low cost. They weren't super high-end as far as technical features, but they really were workhorses for your property, and they worked like an animal. Pun intended. But we certainly hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It wasn't quite on garden tractors, but it was a unique tractor line that we wanted to mention in the video. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. And if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. There is a lot of background information, research, etc. that goes into planning out these tractor videos. There's a lot of information that we need to memorize and kind of look at to tell you accurate information for these old tractors from the past. So until next time,